Hello, One Two Man here, and today I'm going to be going over the most recent change log for Marine Arena. This is going to be change log October 20th, 2011, so that was just yesterday. And there were some balance changes. There's also going to be another patch right after this one that's just going to fix some bugs, like the Marauder hug bug, and probably some of the other bugs that were associated with this most recent patch. But I'm not going to do a video on those ones just because they're only bug fixes and they won't have any balance changes in them. So as far as changes for this patch, I'm sure you guys all noticed the leaderboard is completely changed. There is no more global leaderboard. If you want to actually see someone's global stats, you just hover over their name in the actual leaderboard. And I do know there's a bug right now that the leaderboard disappears after the 40-minute mark, I think, but that'll be fixed real soon. That's just because when Fugly Pump was working on his stuff, he did it in a different version of Marine Arena, and they have to actually transfer all of that code over to the new version, and it's just a lot of code for Ash to have to sift through, and that's why you're seeing some bugs for that. And then as far as actual balance changes go, all of the mercenary compounds, so their merc compounds, got armor increased, and they're going to see some health increase as well, some normalizations. Basically, before you saw, like, for example, like Zergling base would be worth 50 bounty, but the Immortal base would be worth like 425, but they had the same health, and I actually think that the Immortal base had one less armor. So basically this patch just got rid of some of those inconsistencies. Now the way the bounties are going to work, as far as when you kill a merc base or another person's merc base, for tier 1 it's going to be 150, for tier 2 it's going to be 250, tier 3 is 450, and tier 4 is 600. And also when you upgrade your mercenary, so when you go from tier 1 to tier 1.5, it will increase that mercenary bounty. So when you go from Marauder to Marauder, it's going to go from 150 to 250. So merc sniping is a lot more viable. It's something that you always should have watched out for, but particularly like with, say, warp lots. You want to know when someone has warp lots and guard your merc base. Otherwise, they might just run in and snipe it, because it is worth a good amount of bounty now. And then as far as other balance changes go for actual units, the Zealot, its charge duration, so how long that it's in charge mode, I guess, was increased from 3.5 seconds to 6 seconds. And keep in mind that it also only has a cooldown on that ability of 10 seconds. So it's going to be a lot more hard to kite Zealots now, which is the point of that change. And then also there was the unintended bonus that warp lots were getting towards heavy damage, which was making them so strong against Marauder, and that was removed. So that's a little bit of a nerf, I guess, but it was an unintended buff to begin with, so it's not a big deal. And then the big one for this patch is going to be the sharpshooter nerfs. So on the basic unit sharpshooter, their attack speed was increased from 0.9 to 0.95, so it's just a little bit of an increase to lower their DPS a little bit, make them not as good of a unit early game, because before they were just kind of cleaning everything up. And then also the sniper damage was decreased by 1. So now, I think before the snipers started with 13 damage, they now start with 3. So these are both 2 nerfs to snipers. Hopefully we'll see them less predominantly in games. They're kind of holding back all of the tier 3 because they countered Immortals, they countered I think Goliath a little bit too. So they were just pushing everyone to go more tier 1 Marauder, otherwise you would end up losing to this super tech sniper. So I've already played a few games and I've noticed that people are going less sniper. That's a good thing. I'm happy about that. And as far as other changes go, the Stalkers are probably going to see some buffs in future patches, but for now we just decreased their bounty by 1. It was 12, and that was because back in the a few patches ago, before the merc system change, Stalkers were pretty powerful, so that's why they had such a high bounty. But now it just doesn't seem to be the case, or at least nobody's really playing them correctly or something. I don't know. I've played them a few times. They actually do feel a little bit weak. It's because they have a slightly larger unit size than normal, and their DPS is about the same as an average unit now. So we might just see some DPS increases or maybe some health ups or something like that. Who knows? Either way, their bounty got reduced by 1 in this patch. And then as far as all of tier 3, these are changes that are basically across all of tier 3, Destroyers, Goliaths, Reavers, and Immortals. Their cost got reduced by 100. So it went from 1300 to 1200, and they also, whenever you build their merc base now, the first time, instead of getting just 5, which is what you would get before when you build them, now you get 15, and this is intended to help give you a little bit of a boost when you go tier 3, because before people were, I mean, for example, when you're tier 1 and you morph your tier 1, because those units are the same in the editor, what happens is all your sharpshooters, for example, would become snipers. So you'd have this huge unit advantage over someone that went tier 3, and they would have to basically wait in their base to mass up. Otherwise, you destroy them once they came out. So that's why now you get 15 tier 3 instead of 5. And then the only real nerf to any tier 3 other than those two changes, which were buffs, was the Reaver starting armor was reduced to 3, down from 4, and that's basically because the cost was reduced a little bit. The Reavers were very strong, so we just gave them a little bit of a nerf to kind of keep them in line with that buff. So, and then as far as other changes go, we've got a hero change, which is actually kind of funny. I just did a hero strategy video on Infestor into Queen, which is a very effective strategy, especially for late game. And it looks like they also got a buff in this patch, which is it increases their range, so their radius that they're able to cast fungal by 0.2 per level, and then it also increases their fungal growth radius, so the actual diameter of their fungal growth spell is increased by 0.1. So those are 2 buffs, and you can see that was actually the radius per level was actually a pretty big increase. It went from 0.03 to 0.1, so it's a fairly large increase. So I would definitely encourage you guys to give some Infestor a try. And Queen, if you watch my video, you'll see just how strong it is late game. A lot of people in public games just don't know how to deal with it, so that can be a lot of fun, I guess, too, or frustration for the player if you're going against the Queen, I guess. And then other than that, there were some basic air nerfs. All of their bounties were increased, not just because their bounties were so low, but you guys already know that like early game air just isn't that strong, but late game air is devastating. I've actually lost to it a few times now, where someone will just start kind of piling into defense in their regular merc, like whether it be snipers or destroyers, and then all of a sudden they'll switch to like Mutalisk or Void Rays, and there's just nothing you can really do about it anymore. So there's probably going to be some air nerfs, but I would say it'd be around the range of more of like an early game buff and a late game nerf. So we're going to look into that. I'm not sure how it's really going to work out, but I would definitely say that late game like Void Rays or Mutalisk, they're very scary. I've lost a couple times with that now, and it's frustrating because there just isn't much you can do. And then so I guess the Mutalisk bounty was increased from 15 to 17, and then the Void Ray bounty was increased from 14 to 18, and that's just because they are obviously the most powerful air merc. And then it looks like also the Void Rays like unit size was decreased from 1 to 0.75, and this is just to kind of prevent them from spreading out as fast as they were before, which is making them kind of like almost immune to splash because of how fast they're spreading out. So hopefully that'll reduce that time a little bit, because splash was almost completely useless against Void Rays in the last patch. They were a very, very scary unit. And then Wraith saw some complete changes actually. So besides the bounty increase, which went from 14 to 16, now its burst lasers, which are its ground attack, have a splash of 0.2 radius, and this will help them with Marines more, because what was happening is they were overkilling units. So as units would attack them, they would all attack the same one, wasting all of their damage because it wasn't projectile damage, and they weren't actually able to hurt anything. But they also saw a nerf to their anti-air damage. So splash fraction, which is the fraction of damage that you do based on your total damage. So say you were doing 20 damage and your splash fraction was 50%, so anything within your splash radius would take 50% of that 20 damage, so it would take 10 damage. It was reduced from 50% to, sorry there, had to take some water. It was reduced from 50% down to 30% so that it will be less effective against air. Wraith will be more vulnerable to defense tech, so that was a really good thing, because Wraith are just like, they just basically stomp on air real bad. So the trade-off here is that they're better against ground a little bit and a little bit weaker against air. So I think that makes it for all the changes to this patch. If there's any actual balance changes in the future patches, I will be sure to post about them, but I don't think there's going to be. Until later, this is OTM, and I will see you guys next time.